Ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by a very, very special guest. We have former British champion, former Irish champion, former European champion, Matthew Macklin, who, let's be honest, is one of the best additions to Sky Sports commentary for quite a long time. How
Hell
are you, my
yeah.
friend? You doing all right?
I'm all right, mate. Not bad at all.
Yeah?
Yeah, I
What's,
think Twitter would beg to differ at times. That's Twitter, isn't it? We can't. It's a place of. I don't know if it's a place of feedback or a place of negative feedback.
It's a place of people living in basements with too much time on their heads.
Absolutely.
I describe Twitter as people walking around an assembly hall shouting their thoughts at one another. Like, no one listens to anyone on Twitter. It's just a very, very strange place. I can't muck about with it. I'm more like Instagram, like the picture, not like the picture. Done. I'm off.
Keep it simple.
Keep it proper simple. It's very rare for us to get a chance to speak to someone of the Sky Sports commentary crew. Like, obviously, you know, we'll go into your career and your story and stuff like that. But like, how did you get into the commentary side of things? How did that pop up? Because you seem very natural.
I think I was. This sounds bad. I think I was being groomed for it during my.
Hey, listen, we all grew up in the 80s. That happened to a lot of us. I still won't go back to a scout. I got memories.
Yeah, no, it's. I think I was down on ringside a few times as a fighter, and I think they were impressed that I was articulate, that I spoke well, that I could break the fight down, that I was quite analytical and knowledgeable across the sport. So, like I say, towards the end of my own career, they, not even necessarily towards the end. No, I mean, when I was in America in 2011, I went over there, I signed with Ludi Bella after the Felix Sturm fight, and I actually co-commentated on a couple of fights over there. I did the Ward Frotch fight.
Yep.
I was on the commentary panel with Ian Dark and Jim Watt, and also for the Amir Khan against the Lamont Peterson fight. So, you know, that was like I said, that was 2011. So I think it was a natural progression that once my own career, you know, was over, that it was, you know, quite a natural move to move into punditry commentary.
Nice. How have you found, obviously, the punditry and then the Wild West free-for-all of your own podcast? Are you, because you're supposed to, your hands are semi-tied anyway, right? Because obviously you're still Matt Macklin public figure, so you can't exactly talk the wild shit that we do.
Well, I mean, it's definitely more informal. There's definitely there's effing and blinding, and we get into it a little bit. You know, it's a separate thing. It's my own individual thing. It's not associated with Sky Sports. But of course, I do work for Sky, and so I bear that in mind. But listen, there's ways of saying things.
Yeah.
Love it.
You're I mean that's
we're yet to find that way, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I mean it's for like from our perspective as fans, it's very hard to not give it too much opinion, right? Because you're not them, you're not that. Like we was chatting with Denzel Bentley the other day about it. It was just like, you know, like the Daniel Dubois thing, you know, immediately people were livid with him for quitting. Then they all backtracked and it's like, well, he almost lost an eye, it's all right. And then it's just like from the pundit perspective, you know, you have to just be very, very clear.
But that's also why it's incredible having people like yourself doing that job, because I mean, people that if they haven't, and I mean, obviously there's great people that do it that maybe haven't fought, but it helps so much with people that can just give that well-rounded aspect to people. Because people were saying, you know, it's very easy when you're sitting on the couch to be saying he should have done this and should have done that. But when you've been in there and you know the risks involved and things like that, it goes so far to just helping the sport come along where people can hear it in an articulate way, but also hear the reality of the situation. It's not as easy as just hit him in the head. You know?
Yeah, and I think people are conscious that, like, you know, I haven't been in there, done that, haven't been punched in the face, so I can't. It's easy for me to say from the outside looking in, but really I shouldn't speak. But then, and that's true. But you know, everyone's watching it, and but even from a fighter's point of view, like, so my initial reaction was similar to Carl Frampton's and David Hayes, which was, oh, he's quit there. That's going to not bode well for him in the future, because once you quit once, you know, blah, blah. But the benefit of hindsight. So, of course, people are on live TV. They haven't got the benefit of hindsight. They've got the reaction to what they see there and then, as Carl Frampton, David Hay did online. You know, I was one of the person. I tweeted, you know, good, well done, Joe Joyce, down Dubois. You know, he's chose not to continue. He's quit, because that was my instant reaction to what's happened instantly. Yeah. With the benefit of hindsight, 24 hours later, the next day, the Monday, whatever, we hear the extent of his injuries.
Yeah.
Obviously, that changes everything. So you do backtrack then and you think, well, now he hasn't just quit because it got tough. He's quit because he sustained an horrific injury that obviously felt abnormal. The level of you're in pain from the first bell. When you're boxing, you're in there the first round. Your heart rate's elevated. It can get tough straight away. So it's, there's levels of, but there are levels of pain, and he obviously felt an abnormal level of pain where he felt, oh, something's not right here, and therefore rightly took a knee. Fact. To protect himself and his health and his future in boxing. Yeah. So that does change things. But of course, when you're on live television or you're reacting straight away, immediately after online, you don't have that benefit of 24 hours, 48 hours. Of course, you could say, well, you shouldn't be too quick to react then. Well, what are we supposed to do?
Well, but that's your job. Yeah, you're on there, yeah.
We're doing comments for 48 hours after a fight. That's not going to happen, is it? So
I remember that with Victor Ortiz, because he'd already had that sort of reputation, I guess, really. And then when he fought Josecito Lopez, it's like, he's done it again. And then it turned out his jaw was broken like pretty badly. He's like, oh shit, yeah, actually, all right.
Yeah.
Do you
hindsight always wins?
Now you're like ringside, seeing firsthand. Do you ever get itchy to get back in? I know obviously you train a lot. I follow you on Gram. You're still shredded, geezer. Still shreds.
Not right now.
Yeah. Amen. But does it ever like, obviously never to go, I can't see you. I think you're too smart to be going back. But do you ever just be like, well?
No, not really. I mean, listen, I'll be honest. On the real big nights, obviously not now at COVID, but pre-COVID, when you're at the O2 or wherever and it's packed and, the Sweet Caroline, you get that buzz. It's like, I'd love to be boxing tonight. You get that feeling, of course. But I had my time. I actually probably, if I'm honest, really, after the Martinez fight, I think the buzz had probably left me. I mean, that doesn't mean to say that some days I went in the gym and I was excited by it and in love with it. Of course I did. But over a sustained period, the same passion, excitement wasn't what it was. But, you've invested 10, 11 years into it then. You're now at a stage in your career where, you're in world title fights or thereabouts. So the money is a big thing. And I think at that stage of my career, the business end of it, the money aspect, was quite an important part of the decision-making process in terms of direction, fights, etc. Where I can honestly say early on, it was just an afterthought. Money in the first few years, what I was getting for the fight, etc. was generally predetermined to a contract anyway. But even fights that came up, title fights, etc., where we, sort of negotiate the purse. The money was just the money was an afterthought. It was just, oh, by the way, what am I getting paid? It wasn't part of the decision-making process at that stage. It was just, I was just trying to climb the ladder. I was just chasing a dream at that point. So money then was just something that we sorted out after. It wasn't part of my decision-making process.
What was your like fighter as a kid where you're just like, I want that, I want to be that? Was there anyone that you was just like, this is, because you're 38, right?
Yeah, 38.
So you're like prime for Naz era, and like it was a big era.
I mean, all of those guys. I mean, but I didn't sort of want to emulate Naz style-wise or anything like that, But no, I loved watching him fight. Barrera, Morales, You know, back then we used to get so many. Basically, every fight from America was on Sky. It was just we got everything. We were spoiled, really. The amount of content. You know, Sky did not miss that big fight. So you know, all those fights, Pereira, Morales, De La Hoya. I was a big De La Hoya fan. You know, obviously Gatti. I mean, I could go through them all. Even, you know, everyone. I mean, everyone. There was no. I don't think there was any one particular fighter. You know, there was De La Hoya. You know, Hatton was only a few years older than me, 4 years older, I think. But you know, he came through quite young, so 18, he turned pro. So I used to love watching Hatton as well. Michael Brody. You know, all those sort of guys that had. I won't say sluggers, box fighters, guys that, you know, technically good, but would like to stand and have a bit of a fight.
Rough and ready.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was, you know, like your fight with Jamie Moore was like out of control from like a domestic middleweight fight. It was epic, right? And then, you know, you were that. You were very, very fan friendly.
Yeah.
Like to say the least. Do you ever think like if I had, do you ever think about the past? Like if I'd have done this a little bit more technically or whatever, is there that kind of element to it for you? Or are you just like, look, I am who I am. I had a great time and move on.
No, I mean, I don't look back with regret, but that doesn't mean I don't look back and think I should have done things differently, but not in a regretful way.
Yeah,
like,
just rewatching the tape, being like,
but like
tactically.
If I was speaking to someone, you always draw on your personal experience and you look at the lessons and the mistakes, because it gives you knowledge then to kind of, whether it's being as a commentator or if you're just talking to a young fighter, you know, it's experience, isn't it? So I'm telling someone, listen, I wouldn't do that. I'd do this because of X, Y, and Z. You know, I'm not just picking these reasons out of the sky, or I'm not regurgitating someone else's opinion that I've read. I'm basing this on personal experience that I can draw back on and think, yeah, I did this, but you know what? If I'd have done that would have been even better. Or, you know, I did this and this and this, and that was a mistake actually looking back. You know, like, for example, I look back at some of my fights, and I used to train so hard. I used to be so fit. And it was early on, this was before the Jamie Moore fight. When I look at the Jamie Moore fight and I think, you know, how fired up I was and how quick I started and basically set an unsustainable pace.
Yeah.
I punched myself out. But if I look back now, if you look back at maybe a handful of fights going into that, the writing was on the wall that was always going to happen, because I was doing it in fight. I was getting away with it in fights. You know, I boxed a guy called Michael Monaghan in Ireland, and I knocked him out in the 5th round. And let me tell you, if I hadn't knocked him out in the 5th round, I was fucked. Can we swear? Or
Yeah.
You know, I'd have absolutely. I'd almost blown the gasket, if you know what I mean. Like, I remember, and even the fight before that was against the guy, or a couple of fights before that was a guy called Scott Dixon. And I nearly did the same thing there. I came out 100 miles an hour, blasted him pillar to post. I didn't give him a chance to punch back.
Yeah.
You know, he was that busy defending my onslaught that he didn't even get a chance to throw back. So after four and a half rounds, I'm almost gassed, because I've put 12 rounds of work. I've tried to sprint the marathon. Do you know what I'm saying? And I did that against Scott Dixon, and I got away with it, because I got him out of there at the end of the 5th. I did it against Michael Monaghan, and I got away with it because I got him out of there in the 5th. The fight before Jamie Moore, I come out like a lunatic. It was an 8th round, and I stopped him, I think, in the 4th or 5th. But again, if he could have weathered it a bit more, I'd have blew up, because I just set a completely unsustainable pace. I'd hit that lactic acid level. And you don't come back from that. You know, you just don't. You have to. There's a threshold that, as long as you stay within it, you can go all night. But if you go over it, you might. For example, I'll give you this. Let's say I went in. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say you do chin-ups. Now, I could probably do 5 chin-ups for as many sets as I wanted.
Yeah.
But if I do 10 in the first one, I'll probably do 7 in my next set and probably 3 in the one after, and then I'm done.
Done. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. You don't recover it. It doesn't come back. Wherever, just stay below that 5. I could probably go all night long. And you know, it's a funny one because it wasn't like I was totally unaware of this at the time. You know, I remember speaking with Billy Graham, and you know, we trained so hard, and Ricky Hatton had fantastic stamina, and he trained, and I trained like that. I had that stamina in the gym, but I didn't pace it like he did. He knew when to work, when to rest, when to work, when to rest, and he stayed. He, even though he was setting a mad pace, he was conserving energy himself.
Yeah,
he was staying below that line. Let's say
taking the foot off the pedal every now and then. I just went
full hammer, and then thought, shit, I better pace it. Then I couldn't get it. And then when I tried to step back and get a rest, you know, you're in there with another person, and they can sense that, and they step back on you, and they make you stay at that pace because they know then you're going to blow up. And that's what happened with Jamie. Jamie had actually done the same thing earlier in his career against Scott Dixon. He completely punched himself out, and he obviously learned how to pace himself. So when we fought, he would have watched me, studied me, and thought, if you can, you know, most of these guys can't stay there with Macklin. He's blasting them out of there. But if I can stay there with him, and when he wants to rest, if I step on him and make him go again, he's going to end up blowing up. And that's what happened. You know, he was spot on. And that's why I think the experience won him the fight, you know, because he knew that. But yeah, that was something that, like I said, I look back on. It's not with regret, but it's something that I look back on and think, you know, if I was ever training a fighter, that would be something that I'd absolutely hammer home. Like that would be something that I'd be hammering home every day, because it was a mistake that I made, not once, not twice, but I made it over and over again. I didn't learn from that mistake until I lost against James Moore. And I suppose the pain then of the defeat made me look at everything, you know, with a fine-tooth comb, because, you know, when you win, and like I say, those performances, I was making mistakes, but I was getting away with them. Yeah. So, you know, you celebrate the win, and people say, you know, well, maybe you need to watch out for that. Yeah. And on to the next one. You know, you don't really, you know, it's in one ear, out the next. But when you lose, and you know, listen, any fighter will tell you the pain of a loss is terrible. So you all of a sudden you shine a light on everything, and you analyze it, you know, with a microscope, and then you make the necessary adjustments. But like, there were fights I had. It's funny because there's fights I had where I nearly punched myself out, where I was super fit, and I'm talking in 5 rounds, because I went at such a ridiculous pace. And then there were fights later on in my career which I took where I wasn't in the best of shape because there was an injury or whatever the reason was. But because I didn't have that same belief in my conditioning, in my fitness, my approach was different. I took my time. I conserved everything. I made sure I held a bit back. And actually, at the end of 10 rounds, I felt sweet, and I wasn't anywhere near as fit or as well conditioned as some of those fights earlier in my career where I nearly blew up after 5 rounds. So it's not just about being, you know, super fit. It's also about knowing how to pace it.
It's also too, like you were saying, if you had the younger fighter, you tell them those experiences, but it is very much also the sort of thing you almost have to go through it, right? Like you said, like, because you would have known, oh, fucking hell, that was hard if he had to last another round. But when you're winning, that lesson doesn't learn. So you can see it throughout generations, you know, you pass on that lesson. And then until it really happens, you're like, okay, fuck, now I really do need to change that up.
Yeah. I mean, there's theory and there's practice, isn't there? You know, you know, you want to, and, you know, it's one of those, like, you could be speaking to someone, explaining it to them, and they could be nodding their head going, yeah. But it's like, I'm thinking, all right, well, I would have been nodding my head because in theory, I get what you're saying. But then on the night, when in the heat of the battle and everything else, you know, that overruled, and I still end up punching myself. So, you know, maybe if I was training a fighter, I'd maybe do a couple of 10-round spars, and I'd let him punch himself out and get beaten up in sparring. You know what I mean? Because you need to learn.
Nice.
Man, as a pupil, pain is his teacher.
yeah, no, exactly. It is. It really is. I mean, it's you know, like I say, when you win the fight, when I look at those fights, go, you know, like I say, there's 3 of them there. The one before Jamie, the Scott Dixon and the Michael Monaghan fight. All three of those fights, I'm telling you now, I was virtually gassed out, but I got the stoppage. But I'm telling you, if it had gone another round or two, I might have lost.
Wow. With I mean, because like to get a split draw in Germany against Stern, I mean, you're an uncrowned world champion, right? That's fact.
Facts.
You know, there's always the jokes about in Germany you have to get a knockout to get a draw there. Like, from all of the work that you put in, everything that you did to have, I mean, everyone saw that. Everyone. How? I mean, a bitter pill wouldn't cover it. Like, at that point, did you think, you know, kind of fuck boxing at this point? Was that like a tough one for you, or did that push even further?
Do you know what? It's a funny one. So before the Stern fight, if you go back a couple of years before the Stern fight, I knocked out Amin Asakainen in a round, and I kind of broke the top 5, top 6 in the world. And
yeah,
you know, I've been pro 8 years at this time. I had injuries. I changed trainers. I changed promoters, and I'd been to America and done training camps. I've come back, and all of it's a little bit. It's all hardship, you know. It's all hardship. And it all takes a piece of you. So I think by the time I got the Stern fight as world title shot, I actually felt reinvigorated. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to look beyond this, because I did that a bit in my career. I'd be, want to be British champion, then I get to be British champion, and I'm like, right now I want to be European champion. And I was never being present. And I'm not saying never, but I didn't probably soak it up and enjoy where I was, because I was too busy to be somewhere else. You know, I suppose that's ambition a little bit as well. But when the Stern fight happened and it got signed and everything, I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to look beyond this. And not as in from an enjoyment point of view. I'm just going to enjoy every day training for this fight. This is somewhere I've wanted to be for a long time now, and I'm here. So I'm not going to look past it. I'm just going to be present in the moment and enjoy every day of this training camp. And that's what I did. And that's what I did in the week in Germany. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to be nervous. I'm just going to enjoy being here. I'm going to soak it up, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I did that. And then on the night of the fight, I executed the game plan that we devised, and I performed. You know, I performed to the best of my ability, I believe, on the night. So after that, whatever happens then is out of my control. You know, the judges, I've got no say on that. You know, so you know, it's about controlling the controllable. There's no point getting too in life. I think there's no point getting too stressed out about things you've got no control over. Do you know what I mean? So I just thought to myself, I've performed. You know, the decision, that's not my thing. Yes, was I disgusted? Absolutely. Was I angry? Definitely. But I think when we got to the press conference, and it was packed because he's a mainstream star over there. You know, he's on billboards and everything. Like I think he earned 4 or 5 million euro for the fight with me.
That's the one where he had like the big banner, isn't it? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Like he had like the ridiculous big banner of him shirtless on a throne, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Sure.
And I was in the ring for like 15 minutes. Boxing.
Well, it's a big banner.
But it was, you know, so he was a mainstream star in Germany. So when we went to the press conference, it was you know, there was a lot of people there, and my manager Brian Peters just said, "Look, I'm not going to say too much. I'm just going to let the boxing world speak." And he read out 10 or 11 tweets from Andre Ward, Al Bernstein, Lennox Lewis, Dan Raphael, Carl Froch, Eddie Hearn, these people, Lou DiBella, and it was like, you know, it made me feel better because I thought, you know what, everyone's seen it. Everyone has seen this. It was on Sky Sports. It's on American television. You know, German TV had me winning by 4 rounds.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, so I just, you know, I just thought, I'm not going to get too stressed out. I was annoyed and I was angry. You know, looking back now, obviously, former British, Irish, European champion, 3 times world title challenger. It should be former world champion.
Yeah, it really
should.
should.
So that's annoying. But you know what? I don't know. Listen, I look back on my career now, and the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Fact.
And I'm still blessed to be lucky enough to be working in boxing as a pundit commentator. What more could you want, really, as well? You know what I mean? So you can be a half glass empty person, or you can be a glass half full person. And I'd like to think that my glass has fucking overflown that many times. You know, I'm
For sure.
You know, so.
And let's be honest as well. Like the Stern performance was amazing, but for a competitor, like the other two challenges that you had, arguably some of the best middleweights ever. You know, Sergio's unbelievable. I mean, Triple G's Triple G. We don't really have to get into that one. I've watched the DAZN one where you took it like you still have a little giggle about it, which is, I respect that, because you get scared seeing that geezer on the other side of the ring in the robe with the fucking, you're like, I'm not sure about all this anyway. But like with the Sergio fight, because we had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he's a fascinating guy to listen to. He's actually quite similar to you. Like you've clearly done a lot of mental work in like the language that you say. He's very similar to that. Did it feel like that fighting him? Because he was very elusive, very unorthodox. Yeah.
So, you know, when I fought Felix Sturm, I threw over 1,000 punches, you know, from middleweight.
And
they weren't
serious, isn't it?
And they weren't tippy tappy. They were power shots. So I was in unbelievable shape. And, you know, so if you were Sergio Martinez looking at me, and you're going to look at my last fight, and you're going to look at the fight in a world title fight. So he's looking at that thinking, this guy sets a hot pace. He's puts combinations together, body puncher, etc. But I could never have approached the Sergio Martinez fight like that, because he would have chewed me up. Because he's, you know, he hits hard, he's accurate, he's faster than me. You know, he's a counter puncher. You know, it wouldn't have happened. I'd have got took apart if I tried to approach it like that.
Yeah.
So tactically, it was a completely different fight. You know, and knowing that he was going to expect that version of me, or at least maybe that version that a bit more refined, but to sit on the back foot and box and be patient and feint and move my head, it threw him. It upset him. He couldn't read me. He couldn't find his range. He's a counter puncher. He wants to counter punch. He wanted me to be aggressive. So when I was sitting back and I was feinting and I wasn't leading up and I was changing the angle and I kept giving him a different look, he could never get the read of me. And remember Buddy McGirt saying to me, we trained for the fight, this is a simple fight. All you got to do with this fight is just jab. Just keep it simple. Just feint. Move your head. Don't get static. You know, keep changing the angle. Keep changing the distance. Only a little half a step. And you'll just keep offset. He needs to readjust then, reset. He wants the counter puncher. But if you're not giving him nothing, what can he do? But for me, someone that likes to fight in a rhythm and go at a hot pace, to maintain that discipline to box like that was difficult, because it's not my personality, you know. So I'm constantly having to sort of hold myself.
You're fighting
back.
him and yourself,
Yeah, internally I want to go, but really, that's why training, what you do in the gym, you'll take into the fight. That's why training is important, because it's repetitions, it's drills, but it's doing it every single day. That then on the night of the fight, that's what'll happen. So you know, I think I trained for Buddy with 11 weeks, but it was, you know, that was a long time really. But I think it was important in that fight to really, because I'm almost remolding myself for that fight, you know.
Did I mean, how because Buddy's a pretty illustrious trainer, isn't he? Like, did he add or remove much from your game?
Well, I trained with Buddy for a couple of fights back in 2008. I fought Euroboy Campus. We only had about 4 weeks together that time. Then I went back out there and did another 4 or 5 weeks with him for a fight that didn't happen in the end. When I came back, it got called off. So, you know, and then I think I was signed back with Frank Warren, and, you know, going over to Florida, logistically and finance, you know, it wasn't cost effective. So, you know, we kind of went away. But then obviously when I signed with DeBella and I was based out in New York, all of a sudden things change, and, you know, a new Buddy. So I mean, every single thing he said in the Martinez fight was absolutely spot on. Everything he said that I had to do worked. Everything he said that I couldn't afford to do, I got nailed for. So it was spot on, but it was simple. This wasn't an overcomplicated thing. He kept it basic. He said, Martinez is basic. He said, just keep it basic on the jab, feints. But it's all right saying that. But it's implementing it, isn't it? And drilling it into you, and then executing it on the night.
He was in your corner for Triple G as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to talk about that if you're called to talk about it. I mean, you get the nod to fight Triple G. You're a fighter. You're not. Fighters are never scared of fighters, but there's a certain mystique to him, especially then. Right, what is he? 350, 345 and 5 as an amateur, Olympic silver medalist. Like this, that they did a really good job in PRing him, and they still do, of this like Terminator Eastern Bloc murderer, right? Yes. What was that like to be like? Because obviously you knew who he was, Buddy would have known who he was. Like, how do you go about preparing? Because like the amount of amateur experience he has was out of control, is still out of control. Like, you would be dealing with someone, it's just like a master, right?
So Golovkin, I've known Gennady Golovkin since 2000, because me and him are the same age, and we both boxed in the World Junior Championships in Budapest in 2000. He won the gold medal at light welterweight. I boxed for England at welterweight. I got robbed in the quarterfinals against the Hungarian, but whatever. But he won the gold, the weight below me, and got best boxer of the tournament. Right. So I knew he was a standout fighter, and I thought that maybe our paths would cross in the amateurs, but they didn't. We boxed a couple of mutual people. But anyway, when he turned professional, he was getting rave reviews. He was based out in Germany. It's someone I had my eye on, because I knew he was the real deal, and I believed I was. So I thought our paths might cross. So you keep an eye out, and then. So when he was kind of made the sort of the move to America, it was a funny one, really, because he was world champion, and he was probably the most avoided fighter in the world.
Absolutely.
And actually, when the time come when I fought him, I was 31 years old. I'd been pro for 12 years. I'd fought for the world title a couple of times. I don't think my heart was in it as much as it definitely wasn't in it as much as it was one time. I'm a world-class fighter now. I'm getting, really good money for fights where I think for years you slugged for relatively speaking pennies, so you're up there, and you can get up for those big fights, the world title fights. You get up for it. So when the fight was, I was meant to fight. I was with Lou DiBella, and Lou DiBella had a date, I think it was May 11th, 2013, for me to fight. And he was trying to make me and Andy Lee. But Andy Lee had just, I think Manny Stewart had died, and he had a fight with Adam Booth. He boxed a guy called Anton Fitzgerald, and Andy didn't perform well. And I think he just didn't really want he turned the fight down. And I think it was, I'm not saying Andy doesn't think he could beat me. I think all fighters think on their night they can beat the other one and whatever. But I think at that point, he wanted more time with Adam Booth. It was a new trainer, and he didn't want to go into a hard, a 50-50 fight until they'd kind of built the relationship. So that fell by the wayside. So anyway, we couldn't get a suitable opponent for that day. So that day kind of fell apart. So I remember Golovkin. There was a guy a publicist that was kind of vocal on Twitter about this June 1st date that Golovkin had on HBO, because HBO were invested now in Golovkin. He'd beaten Proxo, he'd beaten Gabe Rosado. They were hearing he was this special talent and he was going to be the next big thing, but they couldn't really announce that because he beat Gabe Rosado or Proxo. No disrespect, they were good fighters, but they weren't, people were like, so what?
You were like top 5 at the time, weren't you?
So I was very much a top 5. You had Kid Chocolate was WBO champion, but he was over on Showtime.
Yeah.
And they weren't really doing cross promotions. You had Chavez and Martinez had already fought each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think Martinez was injured. Martinez wasn't going to fight Golovkin because he didn't need to. You know, Chavez wasn't going to fight him because he didn't need to. You know, these were big ratings on HBO. No one was going to force them into that fight. You had Golovkin and you had me. That's the top 5. So
for sure,
you know, like I say,
what a murderer's row that is.
Yeah,
you know. So and listen, no one wanted to fight Golovkin. He was being avoided like the plague, and people weren't avoiding me in the same context as they were him. But I was still not really someone you want to fight. Why? I'm obviously I can box, which I proved against Martinez.
Just high risk, right?
Look at the fight I had with Sturm. You know, I've got a couple of. So at this point now, I've lost 4 times. It's like, what have I got to gain from fighting Macklin? Really? You know, if you're one of these kind of top guys in the top 10, what do you really get for beating me? And it's a hard fight. Why? Yep. You know, so at that point, I remember this publicist guy was kind of outing people or pointing it on people about fighting Golovkin on this June 1st, and I didn't have a date. I wanted to fight, and you know, I was 31 years old. The time is now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Type thing. The time is now. Let's make these fights because, if anything, I'm on the slide at this stage. You know, I'm not getting better. You know what I mean? If anything, I'm getting time's not on my side now. So, I remember thinking, well, I haven't got a date on HBO, and I just put it back. I pushed back on the guy on social media, and I said, yeah, I'll fight him. I said, I'll tell you what, put us both on June 1st on a double header, and I'll sign it now, and we'll fight September, October. And I think once they knew that I was willing to fight him, they just wanted to cut straight to it. They didn't want the June 1st date. They locked on. At the same time, Mayweather has just left HBO and signed with Showtime. Right. So, you know, heads are fucking rolling at HBO. You know what I mean? They're thinking, well, what about this Kazakh kid? Sure, isn't. I thought this is the next Mike Tyson, the next star. Yeah. And they're like, well, he is. So everyone says in the gyms in America. And they're like, well, that's no good to us. We need the viewers on HBO to think that and to buy into that. So obviously, you know, I ticked every box as the opponent. So they made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Boom.
No, they didn't put a horse's head in my bed, but you know.
Well, and if they did, it was full of substantial amounts of gold, and we're good.
Exactly. They offered me, you know, by far a career best purse.
Yep.
And also, and I didn't want to go straight into the fight. I hadn't boxed. I'd had one round, and that my fight previous to that was the September before. I knocked Alcine out in a round in Vegas, and before that, I hadn't boxed to the March. So I've had one round in 15 months. Yeah. This guy has boxed twice that year.
Yeah.
He boxed in Monaco. I think he boxed Rosado, I think, in the January. And I think he boxed in Monaco the end of March. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
that was like, was it Umar? It's that African guy, wasn't it, in Monaco he fought, I think?
Yeah, I think it might have been.
Oh, yeah. Smashed that. Yeah.
The Japanese guy he knocked down around, was it?
Oh, yeah. That was
that might have
well.
been, yeah.
So I'm thinking, you know, I'm 31 years old. I've had a hard career. I'm probably on the slide. It's an uphill task anyway. He's boxed twice this year. I've had one round in 15 months. Now I want to fight first. I put us both on. I was arguing for that. Anyway, they came back and said, look, we can't do that because they need something now because of the Mayweather announcement, you know. So they said, look, if you don't win the fight, we guarantee that your next fight will be back on HBO. So I'm thinking, you know, and it was good money. So I thought, well, I get the fight with Golovkin. It's a world title fight. If I win, I win. Don't have to really think any more about that.
Yep.
If I lose, you know, I'm going to still be back on HBO in a big fight, getting well paid. And if I win, I'm back up there. You're at that point once you're in that sort of top 5 or whatever, you know, and every fight's a 50-50 fight. You win, or you know, you win. You're as good as your last fight. You lose, all right, you've forgotten about. But you're in another 50-50 fight, and if you win that, you're back up there. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So it's like, so that was kind of my, like I say, the the business side of things now was a big part of the decision-making process, where early on in my career, I didn't give a shit about the money. But now, I'm 31 years old. I'm not going to go forever. Getting some big lumps of money where you can invest and buy housing, that it matters. So
you bloody well earned it. It's time to,
it was a good offer. The person was good and everything, but even at that, and the money was a big part of the decision-making process. I took the fight with the belief of winning. I've always been a realist, and especially at that stage in my career, I was particularly, let's say, a realist. And I thought, you know what? And no fighter likes to admit this, but I thought he's probably a better fighter than me. I can admit that. Looking at what he's done, even in the amateurs, he's probably a better fighter than me. I'd even go along to say 9 times out of 10, he probably beats me. But 1 time out of 10,
that one, yeah.
It's all you need, isn't it?
I've just got to make that night, that one time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I thought, he's never been in an absolute war like I have.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't do it, but he hasn't done it. I have been there. I've been to the well. I know what it's like. I know I can do it. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to jump on him. Let's make the fight. He'll probably underestimate me anyway. And I said, I'm just going to literally jump on him from the first bell. I'm not even going to think about 12 rounds. I'm going to make it a Hagler Hearns.
Yeah.
And, and we'll just go for it. Buddy McGurr is a stylish boxer. He's a technical, tactical, So now I don't think Buddy watched too much of Golovkin either, by the way, because he was like, no, he's just, he played him down really. And Buddy wanted me to box, Now maybe Buddy could have done that, but I wasn't good enough. You got to think about what your strengths and your weaknesses. Now, I wasn't good enough as a boxer to outbox Golovkin. Now, was I good enough as a fighter? Listen, a fight's a fight. Who knows? It's a dog fight, isn't it? If you drag someone into that dog, really, I'd have been dragging him down to my level and just making it, because
attrition.
But he was like, no, you should, box, make him reach for the jab. And I understood what he was saying, and he wasn't wrong in what he was saying. But the reality was, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
What the plan he had was great if someone could do that, but I couldn't do it. Not good enough. So by backing off and boxing Golovkin, I just invited more pressure. There was no deterrence. There was nothing to deter him from coming at me. He was better at that range than me. You know what I mean? So it's like my head was, all right, I'll give it a couple of rounds.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, then I'm just going to war, which I tried to do in the third and I got done. But the problem was, at that point, my tail was already between my legs and his was up. His tail was up, mine was between my legs. I was cut. I lost both rounds in a big way. My confidence was on the floor. His was up here, and my confidence going into the fight. I never really talked about this after the fight, because you don't ever want to make excuses, but I split all my knuckles on the left hand 4 weeks out. I went to New York 5 weeks out from the fight, and I was hitting the ground running. I was in good shape already. I'd sparred for 2 weeks in Spain, and when I got there, the second day we did some pads, and I split all the knuckles on the left hand. So then I didn't punch them for like 2 weeks. So we're down to 3 weeks now, and I was basically at that point. Then I just kind of had to. It was either pull out, which I tried to do. We tried to put the fight back. HBO told us not an option. The official line to my manager was, if he's not fit to box, he's not fit to box. But the unofficial line to him was, if he doesn't box, Golovkin on that date, he will never be on HBO again. So
strong, isn't it?
Like, and I've got this deal with a lot of money, and I'm 31 years old. It's like, what am I going to do? And I remember saying to Brian, well, what do you think we should do? And he said, well, we'll put it this way. I think you're better off going ahead with the fight and losing than not going ahead with the fight.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, when I talk about that nine times out of 10 he beats me, I needed to make that night that one time.
Yep.
I need everything to go right for me. I need everything to go right for me. I need him to underestimate me. I need to box better than I've ever boxed before. I need a bit of luck as well. Do you know what I mean? And then it's possible. And then you believe. But when that happened and the injury and everything starts going wrong, the belief's gone now. You know when people talk about see it, believe it, achieve it. The key ingredient there is the believing.
Believe. Yeah.
That's the key part. Everyone dreams. Every man dreams, but the belief comes. That's the thing that's the key part. But that comes from the action. That comes from every day in the gym, smashing your personal bests. That's where the belief comes. That's when you believe I can do something special here. It doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. I know I can do this. That's where that's the key ingredient. But of course, and had everything gone the way it had gone, and I sparred well, and I was smashing the track times, and I'm, the pads are looking unbelievable, the confidence is in the camp. That's where that belief comes. I remember when I fought Felix Sturm, and listen, Sturm isn't Golovkin, but it's the same principle. I remember walking to the ring that night, and honestly, I couldn't have given a shit if King Kong was in the other corner. I thought I was going to win, and it didn't matter what anyone else thought. I believed to the absolute depth of my soul that no one was going to beat me on that night. The decision, whatever. But, that's how I felt. Did I feel like that walking to the ring against Golovkin? No, of course I didn't. No, because of all the things that had happened, because I hadn't smashed my personal best on the track. I hadn't sparred well. I was literally getting through the training camp in one piece so I can have the fight. Because from a career point of view and a business point of view and a money point of view, not from I'm going to win this fight because I believe in myself. Do you know what I mean? It was
for sure.
An uphill task when just became almost impossible. It just became
a hill with another hill behind it. Yeah,
I didn't even believe I could do it. Really, truth be told. Now that doesn't mean I wasn't walking to the ring thinking I could win. Of course I was, because I'm drawing on things and I'm talking myself up, and I'm going in there to win. And it's boxing. It's boxing, and anyone can get knocked out and all the rest of it. But the belief wasn't where it should have been. Definitely not.
It's interesting what you say with the tactic, because it's like Maidana. When he fought Mayweather the first time, he just mean mugged him, and Mayweather wasn't prepared for that sort of, and he tried to box him in the rematch. You can tell, same thing. It's good advice, but it's super hard to execute against someone like that. You're almost better just putting it on them. So yeah, I can see what that was.
Look at Josh Warrington this week. Right. Josh Warrington looked as flat as a pancake. There was no crowd. He's gone from fighting Kid Galahad, Selby, Frampton, fights where he was an underdog.
Yeah.
Anyone I spoke to thought Selby was going to beat him. Anyone I thought after that thought Frampton was definitely going to beat him. Galahad as well. So, because I look at Carl, when he approached that fight, he's boxing this Mexican kid who no one's really heard of. You look at his record, you can't really cross-reference it.
Yep.
You could see he was heavy-handed, but he didn't look a particularly classy fighter. You think Josh Warrington, from where the guys he's beaten, this should be an easy fight. But Josh Warrington, mental preparation, there was no fear in him. And fear, when I say fear's everyone feels fear in boxing. The person who's the bravest man in the world feels that fear. It's adrenaline. You're about to have a fight. You're supposed to feel like that. Do you know what I mean? It makes you sharp, fight or flight. Like I say, bravery and courage in boxing isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear, but facing the fear and going through it. Warrington didn't have enough of it. He looked so flat, and also, all of us standing off this guy and boxing him. Josh Warrington is not a boxer. He is not. Yeah. If it was down to his boxing ability, he wouldn't win a world title in a million years. He's not a world-class boxer, but he's absolutely a world-class fighter. He's a Tasmanian devil. He's a pit bull. Do you know what I mean? If if I'd have pet Pitbull, I wouldn't throw him in with Josh Warrington. Josh Warrington,
yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a killer. Warrington is, but to have that, you need a level of fear inside you to be able to fight like that, and he didn't have it against Lara. He just couldn't. I don't even want to say he couldn't get out of first gear. He couldn't even get into it.
Yeah,
he was just stuck in the mud. There was, and I felt sorry for him because it was, in the end, then it was a really bad defeat, wasn't it? He was concussed. It was a terrible defeat for him. It's a shame, but I've gone off on a tangent. I can't remember where I was going.
No, we were talking about the just the styles. Like you were saying how like Buddy almost said to box Triple G, and I was saying with Maidana Mayweather, and you said same thing with Warrington.
No, exactly. Like I say, it's that mental how you approach a fight, the mental preparation. AJ Ruiz, everyone was talking about Wilder, Fury. No one was talking about Ruiz.
No.
AJ trained hard for 8, 9, 10 weeks, whatever it was. But mentally, he wasn't there. Now, I wasn't looking past Triple G, but the belief wasn't there. And the belief wasn't there, not because of it was Triple G, because I knew who he was when I agreed to the fight. The lack of belief was there from the lack of, because of how the preparation went for me. Yeah. It wasn't about how good I thought Triple G was. It was because I knew I wasn't up to where I should be. You know what I'm saying? That's where the lack of belief come from. Not because I was intimidated by Gennady Golovkin's excellence or that. I was, because I knew how good he was. I wasn't bothered about that.
If that was the case, you wouldn't have signed the contract.
I wouldn't have signed the contract. The lack of belief came from the lack of preparation on my side.
Is he the best you've been in with?
He is, but he is the best I've been in with. But it wasn't
with the asterisks of what you said.
What I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't the best version of me by any stretch of the imagination, nowhere near. But it was. But yeah, I still. There were still things that he was. Yeah, no, he is. He's and even watching him since and before and after, I think Golovkin could have mixed with any middleweight in any era. I'm not saying he'd have beaten them all, but I think he's in the conversation of who's the best middleweight of all time. I think he's probably in the top 5. I do. Marvin Hagler, Carlos Monzon, Hopkins, Golovkin. Sugar. There's a few, isn't there? But he's definitely in the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing too, where you were saying, like, from a career perspective, but also from like a history perspective. Like, you fought him when he was Triple G, when people were they were holding it against him, like, well, who have you fought? And it's like, well, no one will fucking get in the ring with him. Do you know what I mean? It's how can you hold?
Golovkin's the same age as me. He's 31, and I was 30. He's not now. He's 38. He was 31 when we were 31 when we fought each other. But I was an old 31, and let's say he was a fresh 31.
Yeah.
But he was absolutely at his prime when I fought him, and he was even better than his prime because he was hungry. He was starving because everyone was avoiding him, and he was starving to prove himself. So I got the best Golovkin there ever was. Let's say,
lucky.
But like I say, listen, and that's not. I've always been a realist, and I believe, the best version of Golovkin would have beaten the best version of me, but I think I would have given him a completely different fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think of the current British middleweight scene? Because it's pretty good at the minute, isn't it? It's on the come up.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because obviously you had that group of fighters together, and you had Martin Murray, Barker, myself, and of course, if you bring Ireland in as well, Andy Lee. It's there was 4 world-class fighters there that never fought each other, which is a travesty.
Yeah.
It was because of the financial things at the time. I was in America with Lou on HBO. Martin Murray was with the Hattons, and then he was with the guy in South Africa, and Barker was with Eddie Hearn on Sky. Andy Lee, that never happened. But right now, there was probably a bit of a, once we all kind of finished, there was probably a little bit of a void there. I mean, you got Billy Joe, but he's kind of above the rest, isn't he? He kind of come just at the end of us. He boxed Andy Lee, and he's been world class, obviously since. But he's kind of on his own, really. I think he's probably he is the number one. But there's a few then on sort of like the British level, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, you got Liam Williams is got his title shot. You got Bentley versus Cash, which if it happens that'd be a pretty good fight. That's a strong. And then you got like the other ones, like Heffron's still no joke. It's a good scene.
Yeah.
How close did you get to fighting John Duddy? Was it just more hype of like someone of Irish descent versus someone in Ireland in like Boston, New York, whatever?
Yeah, there was talk, but there was never any negotiations of a fight or anything. And it's a funny one, really, because obviously John, Andy Lee, Barker, Murray, they're all good lads. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I actually think, I'm not bothered that. But then don't get me wrong, me and Jamie Moore knocked 10 barrels of shit out of each other, and we're good friends. So, whatever. But it's a shame that it didn't happen, because they would have been massive fights. They really would have.
Yeah.
Duddy's a great lad. I mean, that would have been an absolute. I think me and John Duddy would have just been absolute blood and guts.
Yep.
That was
for sure.
True HBO, like Madison Square Garden fan favorite. You would have had 3 of them, no matter what happened. They would have loved it.
Is there any like one fight that didn't materialize that you're like, fuck, I wish that happened?
I think any mix of those, I think me and Andy Lee would have been huge.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a big fight. That's a shame. I think that one, because and I think that could have got made. It was close. And probably that one really, more than any. And listen, me and Barker nearly happened a couple of times. Murray was there as well. It was, all of those. I mean, I fought Jamie. I had a big fight with Wayne Alcock in Birmingham. It was big at the time. It's a shame they never happened. It's just when you think where boxing was, then it was quite fragmented. You had Frank Warren, Frank Maloney, you had Matchroom were there, but they weren't. Eddie wasn't really there, and it was, they were low budget. It wasn't a big operation like they are now. It was a bit, the world recession happened, didn't it? And the budget for boxing, the Premier League wages had just made that jump to that massive thing, and the budget just wasn't there at Sky. And if it hadn't been for my fight with Stern being on Germany and Ludi Bella flying me out to America, and boxing all those fights on HBO that I had at the end of my career, that was the time in which I took that money and sort of invested it. But really, if I was relying on the money at Sky at that time, there wasn't a lot around.
Nice.
And so that's the fight that did materialize. Which of your, I mean, it must be hard to pinpoint, but if you had to pick one, which one just brings a massive smile to your face when you think back and it's like, yeah, that was fucking fun? Favorite fight that you've had?
I think there's a few for different reasons. I mean, look, Alcock in Birmingham was sweet, because it's a local derby, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shit talk, lots of people, and you can imagine,
it sweetens the pie, yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was. I remember that thing very sweet. Obviously, then Asakainen being the next fight, that catapulted me into the world contention, and even though Martinez and Stern were losses, Stern obviously, I won the fight, didn't get the decision. But even the Martinez fight, to box on St. Patrick's Day in a sold-out Madison Theatre at Madison Square Garden, that was just, I was on a billboard in Times Square for 6 weeks. Do you know what I mean? It was a surreal experience, and I shocked a lot of people with how I could box that night. And even that fight, talk about injuries, the same thing happened with the with Martinez fight. I bruised my ribs 3 weeks out. And it was just coming good as well in sparring. It was just starting to click. So I had to stop sparring. Then same thing, split my knuckles on the left hand a couple of days later. So the last couple of weeks over there, last 3 weeks didn't spar. Last 2 weeks didn't even punch. So, but the garden was sold out. I wouldn't. He wanted to move on, Martinez. Really, I wouldn't have got that opportunity again. So, I took the fight, and it was a close fight up until the end. I mean, I remember coming out for the 11th. I was a round down on 2 cards. I was 3 up on another. It was a close fight. But so I think you know, there's fond memories and all different reasons. Listen, Jamie Moore, I got knocked out and spent the night in hospital, but I look back with quite a lot of pride at the courage that I showed.
Yeah. What led up to that? Yeah.
You know, so it's one of them.
Absolutely, man. Because that's the thing. How many people do, you know, you like, that's part of history. Like the shit you've done is incredible, man.
Look, I think, you know, I didn't think I was the fastest fighter, or I didn't think I was the most technically gifted. I think I was a solid all-rounder, but I always thought I'm as brave as anyone, I'm as gutsy as anyone. And when you look in the mirror, you have to see the man you want to be, you know?
Yeah.
And so on that night, no matter how hard it got in there, I never stopped trying to win. I never quit, you know? So I'm the man who I thought, you know, I'm the man who I think I am. That's enough for me.
That's the shit.
I think that's as good as time as any, isn't it? Let's wrap this up because we've had you way more than the 45.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you so much, man.
Cheers.
Brilliant having you, man.
Bye.
Take care, guys. See you later.